Welcome to Chapter 15, Monopoly. Segment 1 of the introduction module is titled Definition and Relevance of Entry Barriers. What will you learn in this segment? We will start with the definition of a monopoly. Then we will talk about the relevance of market entry barriers to maintain a monopoly. And finally, I will give you some examples for these entry barriers. You probably know already roughly what a monopoly is, but here we want to be precise. A monopoly describes a market where only one firm produces and supplies a good. On the other market side, where the demanders are, we have a lot of demanders which are willing to buy the good if the price is right. We further assume that close substitutes to the good discussed do not exist. The last assumption will become important when we talk about the market power of a monopoly. Because if close substitutes would exist, then a monopolist wouldn't have any market power, because consumers always can change to the very similar substitutes. That's why we assume that no close substitutes exist. The term monopolist was used already, but here I would like to give you a precise definition. The firm which produces and supplies the good in a monopoly market is called the monopolist. The monopolist has market power, and he uses the market power to maintain a higher price than in a competitive market. And this generates a higher profit. You will learn in the next module how the monopolist uses his market power to maintain a higher price and generate a higher profit. Here, we take it as a given that a monopolist creates a higher profit. If you remember the segment about long-term equilibrium in the chapter competition, you might wonder how can the monopolist keep his profit? Because if there is a profit, new companies would be attracted to the market and finally the profit would go. Here is what the argument means. If a monopolist makes a high profit, and that's what we assume until we have proven it in the next module, then new companies would enter the market, attracted by the high profit. What would happen if, and this is a big if another company enters the market? If another company enters the market, we don't have a monopoly anymore. Market supply increases. If the market demand does not change, the price would go down. A lower price would also lower the market profits. And these market profits will be distributed now to two companies. But still, there is a profit. More companies would be attracted to the market. When more companies are attracted to the market supply in the market will increase again. Given that the market demand will not change, the price will fall again. And with the falling price, the profits will fall. And on top, the market profits have to be distributed to more companies now. Since there is still a profit, more companies would join the market, the profit would be reduced again, more companies would join, until we have a lot of companies in the market and there is no profit anymore. This is the same than in a competitive market. Does this mean that every monopoly market automatically becomes a competitive market after a while? That can't be, because we have the experience that monopoly markets stay as monopoly markets. So what keeps new companies from entering the market? There must be some kind of barriers which prevents other companies which are attracted by the profit in the monopolist's market from entering the market and increasing the supply in the market. On the next slide, we will discuss which barriers could prevent other companies from entering the market. Here we will discuss some examples for market entry barriers. One type of market entry barrier is if a monopolist is the sole owner of a production resource. An example from some years ago would be the South African company De Beers. They owned almost all diamond mines, so they were the sole owner of the production resource diamonds. Another type of market entry barriers are high entry costs. Entering the market results in very high costs. One very obvious example are cell phones. If a new cell phone company wants to enter the market, they need first cell phone towers. And these cell phone towers have to cover a big area in a high density. Otherwise, there would be a lot of interrupted calls. Building all these cell phone towers before even the first call can be connected is very costly. Other examples are the National Football League or Major League Baseball. To compete with the National Football League, a new football league would have to have at least 10 or 12 teams from the whole US, and these teams must be top teams. To establish such a league would result in incredible high costs. Therefore, it's very unlikely that another professional national football league would enter the football market. The same is true for baseball. Two very interesting types of market entry barriers are patents and copyright. With a patent, the government grants a temporarily monopoly to a company which invented a drug or an operating system like Windows. This leads to a higher price compared to competitive market. Why are governments all over the world granting patents? A good example is AZT, an anti-AIDS drug which is very successful. With granting a patent to the company which invented this drug, the drug became more expensive, less affordable, and some people might even die because they can't afford the drug. Why would the government do something like that? The reason is that especially drug research is extremely expensive and in most cases not very successful. The only reason that companies still do research is that they have an incentive. If they are successful, like with the drug AZT, they can make a huge profit over 20 years. This would be the time the patent is granted to the company. If governments wouldn't grant patents, companies could copy each other's invention. And every company would just wait that the other company would invent something so they can cheaply copy it. This would leave us with companies just waiting for others, and we could not observe any major research breakthroughs. This is the reason why the government grants patents, although they have the disadvantages which are created by monopolies. You can make a similar argument for copyright law. What did you learn in this segment? You learned the definition of a monopoly as well as the definition of a monopolist. You also learned that a monopoly requires market entry barriers. Otherwise, the monopoly profit would attract other companies to enter the market. We covered various types of entry barriers, and you learned that patents and copyrights are necessary to foster research and creativity, but at the same time, they create a monopoly for the time the patent or the copyright was granted by the government.